and you're good.
Great. I'd like to call to order the Design Advisory Board meeting of April 10th, 2024. Let me do a call to order for DAB members. So Todd Bryan, DAB.
Brendan Ash, DAB.
Rory Bilisarkovich, DAB.
Stephen Eckert, DAB.
Matthew Scheck-Snyder, DAB.
Okay, great. Any, do we need to do any other introductions?
Oh, staff.
At this
Kalani
point?
Pahoa.
Okay,
Amanda Cussworth.
Ali Penninger.
Charles Farrell, Planning and Development Services.
Christopher Johnson, also with Planning and Development Services.
okay.
And Allison Blaine, Planning and Development Services.
And ML, did we get you?
ML Robles, Planning Board Liaison.
Okay. Great, thank you. So Amanda is going to start us off with a little bit of rules of engagement, ground rules, decorum.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Thanks for joining, everybody. The city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and board and commission members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. For more information about this vision and the community engagement processes, you can visit our website. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be upheld during this meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. Participants are required to identify themselves using the name they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony will be permitted for this meeting. We're in the Zoom webinar format, so when it is the opportunity for public participation, you may hover your mouse over the bottom section of Zoom and see this raise hand function. We will see that when your hand is raised. You can also find this. Oh, my slide's not advancing, sorry. Let's see, here we go. You can also find this under the reactions button. You can raise your hand there, and everybody that appears in order, I will just call on you and you'll be given 3 minutes to provide your testimony. And just a quick reminder for everybody, this meeting is recorded and will be available online within 24 hours on the city's website. And that's it. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the December 13th, 2023 meeting. So do I have a motion to approve those minutes? We'll do it. We'll discuss them if there's any need for discussion, but can I get a motion to approve them?
Well, and we didn't see the updated minutes, but as long as they were updated according to our discussion last meeting, I think we all said we'd motion to approve them at the time.
Okay. So my understanding is that
We wanted to make sure, because there was a lot of discussion around the language, that once we wrote out what the board members wanted to edit to, I wanted to bring it back to the board. It should be in the packet.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get you guys, your eyes on it one more time, make sure that we have summarized that in the way that you wanted.
so. It sounds like not everybody had a chance to read the minutes that were in the packet. Is there a possibility that we can postpone the approval until May?
We can push these minutes to the next meeting.
Make sure everybody reads it, because it does sound like there was quite a bit of discussion around it.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can do
they-
that and do the
They
other
did
minutes.
update that last paragraph, Brendan, about kind of as far as the board being in disagreement versus us versus Todd. So I think
Glad you
they've
caught
acted.
Yeah, yeah, I think if you guys are, ready to adopt them, then that's fine with me.
Yeah, I'm good to adopt.
Yeah, I would make a motion to approve the minutes in the current form. Somebody
Matthew?
want to second that?
Me as well, yep, I saw them.
Yeah.
Yeah, all in
Okay.
favor?
Yes, all in favor.
Aye.
Right.
Okay. Sounds like it's unanimous. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is public participation for items that are not part of the project review that we'll do in a couple minutes. Any members of the public here? Okay. So next item is the review of the 1525 Spruce Street. And I need to start off by asking a question. And the question is, do we have any DAB members who need to make any disclosures and may need to recuse themselves? This would be the time.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do too. An apparent conflict of interest, and although I do not believe that it would impact my review, I am going to recuse myself for this project.
Okay. All right.
And I also am curious if there's the agenda items that are happening after the discussion,
Yes.
if we will be notified. I know that there was conversation before the meeting was officially started about whether or not we can listen in. Hella it's my understanding that Hella said that if we were in person, that we would need to leave the room. So essentially it would be the same, I guess, unless you've heard back from Hella.
So you guys can't be like just members of the public?
Yeah, that seems crazy because it's all going to be recorded and available on.
Right.
The internet.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, if we just are not participating in the conversation, but able to
Maybe
listen
turn
rather than having to listen to the
video
recording.
off. Video off. So
Kelly is ready to advise us.
Right.
Hi, everyone. Hella Pennewick. I'm with the City Attorney's Office, and I don't attend your meetings very often, but I'm here today in case there were questions just for the beginning of it. And I do recommend that you leave the meeting just for the time being. And Kalani has offered to send you guys a text when the item is done, and then you can just rejoin, just so that it doesn't impact anybody else in their decision making, that somebody might be present that might have a conflict.
Okay.
So again, not listening in as a member of the public, just.
Correct. I recommend to just leave the meeting for the time being.
Okay.
And I will send you an email directly when this is wrapped up, so you can come back into the meeting.
We'll catch up with you guys in about an hour. That's the plan.
Okay.
And
All right.
Mel, did you get clarity on your potential? No?
I think ML just needs to disclose and indicate that she can remain fair and impartial. She's not here in a decision-making capacity today, so I think just disclosing it should be fine, but Hella.
Yes, why don't you describe your situation, ML, and whether you feel like you can be fair and impartial.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Charles and Hella. Yes, so my history with this building is I was there when the building, right after the building was done. I know the original developer and architect. And I actually rented space there for about a year. This was decades and decades ago. So I have no current involvement and I have nothing to gain by being involved with the conversation about it at this point in time. I know I'm not an actual member of DAB, I'm just a liaison, so I think I can report back to planning board in a unbiased manner. So I will remain in the meeting if that's good with everybody.
Well, it's got to be good with Hella.
Yes, I don't think that ML's situation amounts to a conflict of interest or that there's even an
Potentially.
appearance of impropriety. Yeah,
Right.
I'm fine with her participating, but I appreciate your disclosure since I believe this is a site review and potentially could end up in front of the planning board.
Okay, thank you. So
Well,
Matthew
pleasure.
and
Thank you.
Brendan, I think you guys unfortunately need to log off.
But yeah,
All right.
just sure, guys, according to the bylaws, we can't attack you personally, but we can attack buildings. That's not in the bylaw. We can attack buildings.
Well, represent us well. All right. We'll see you in a bit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have this matter at hand, 1525 Spruce Street. We're gonna do this in an hour, do the review in an hour. And we're gonna start with Allison is gonna do a 5-minute sort of opening. We'll check in with public participation, but it doesn't look like there's any. The applicant is not on yet, are they?
They're
bring them
they're
on.
here and I'm happy to promote them after Allison's presentation.
Oh,
Or-
after that, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so Allison, you have about 5 minutes. And the other thing I want to say before we get into that is that because we're shooting for an hour, Kalani is going to do periodic time checks for us to make sure we're sort of on schedule. So we've got 11 items to review. Some of them will go quickly. Some of them may take a little more time. So, but we're going to shoot for an hour. Okay, Allison.
Okay, hi, I'm Allison Blaine, senior planner and case manager working on this project. I think I can probably do this in under 5 minutes, but just wanted to give a little bit of an overview before the applicant presents. The subject site is on Spruce between 15th and 16th Street, and it is located within the urban interface area within the downtown urban design guidelines. It is an existing mixed use building with residential to the east and offices currently to the west. The proposed scope is just limited to the existing office uses that are on the west. So the eastern portion of the building is not part of the scope of this review. This is just a retrofit of the existing building. It is currently being reviewed as a site review amendment to amend the existing PUD on the property to convert the office uses to the west into residential units. The next steps will be the final site review approval, and then this will go before planning board. That has not yet been scheduled, but we'll work on getting that scheduled soon. And a lot of this information will be in your packet. So just a quick overview of some of the criteria that we'll be looking at as part of the downtown urban design guidelines for the partially satisfied and not satisfied. Partially satisfied would be 2.1E, 2.1F, and then not satisfied 2.1D, G, and H. And we'll also ask for some analysis and review of the site review criteria for partially satisfied and not satisfied. I won't read all those, but specifically looking at some of the materials, screening elements of the rooftop, as well as some open space questions. And I think that's all I have for my overview, so I will pass it on to the applicant.
Okay, thank you. So is there any public participation for this particular project review? Any members of the public sign on?
I don't see any. If there is anybody that would like to, I see the applicants here, but if anybody else would like to speak to this item, you can use your raise hand function in Zoom. And I'm not seeing any hands raised though at this time.
Okay. So can we invite the applicant
Mhm.
into the meeting then? Thank you.
Just a little delayed. They're coming.
Okay.
You should be able, there we go.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you all for hearing us today. Thank you, board, for your work. I know it's a lot of work. I appreciate us getting through the conflict of interest here. And I know that has been a joy, but here we are a little more than a month later than we hoped to be, but
Yeah, our apologies for that.
yeah.
So Jim, can you introduce your team, and then we're going to try to give you about 10 minutes to do.
Sure.
give us
So
an
today we just have myself. I'll be presenting if need be. Anna in my office is here to drive the model if we need to get more technical, but I will be able to drive the model in general and go through some drawings. Also, Gavin is on the line, I believe. I can't see all the members, but he is representing ownership. Phil Scholl, who's the main partner on this, is actually away in Europe right now and not here. So I think that is as limited as we have available for us tonight.
Okay. So we'll try to sort of keep this to 10 minutes, but if you could give us an overview, that'd be great.
I will. So I'll start with an image here for ML of reminding her what this looked like in 1980. And so this project was developed, in a different time. This was 1980 in Boulder it was a different world. Downtown was just kind of coming into maturity with the mall being developed, and there wasn't a tremendous amount of office. So we saw this area kind of developed. There were several of these mixed-use buildings that developed in the area of Eastern Boulder here. And so this is I think it's just kind of fun to look at as architects to see these old renderings and how we used to work. So I was just going to flash that up on the screen here. But Allison did a great job of kind of teeing it up a little bit. This is a little bit more of a diagram that helps understand kind of the relationship of the two pieces that are on this lot. So there are two parcels on this lot. The eastern parcel is this shaded in gray here, which is existing. There's 10 existing condominium units that are on there. They were actually built by McStain, who's still a developer around. ML could speak to who actually developed the commercial side. I'm not quite sure who actually built that. So this was all built in 82, 83, and it survived very well. But within the last, even before COVID, with the addition of all the downtown offices that were being constructed, we started to see a vacuum kind of set up here with a drain on some of the smaller offices that have been out in this part of Pearl Street, or Spruce Street. So vacancy rates have gone up. And so this is a good opportunity, I think, of foreshadowing a lot of projects that we're going to see in the coming years of how can we adapt office use into residential use. And so they took a couple of years to kind of position the property for purchase, buying various office condominiums and assembling the property so that it could be redeveloped into office. And that has happened. And as Allison said, we're kind of in the throes here of site review. Hopefully today, based on your comments, we can finalize our site review application and proceed into tech docs and building department. I'm going to flip down one more level to help you kind of understand it a little bit more. So the building itself, it's a 3-story building, but it sits over a parking garage. This parking garage straddles the 2 different parcels. Here's maybe I'll outline that just very quickly, but there's this parcel line that separates the 2 parcels. And as Allison said, we're only looking at the office parcel conversion into residential, but there are some shared components. And so that's important to understand. They're sharing the parking garage, and those parking spots don't necessarily correspond to the lot line. And then, of course, there is this plaza on the front end of the building, or the southern end of the building, that is also shared, as well as parking in the back, some access in the back from the alleyway as well. So, you know, one of the first issues we had on the building was this access issue. Today, the finished floor of this building is about 5 feet above that of Spruce Street. So eroding this plaza area for handicap, you know, for 75 feet of handicap ramp did not seem to make a lot of sense. The notion of maintaining this as an asset and open space seemed more important. In addition, it is an existing building, so we have the opportunity here to develop handicap on the back. So we developed some handicap parking on the back, developed a new entrance on the north side of the building that allows direct access into the elevator. Just to note, the parking was not available below in the parking garage because we didn't have enough height for handicap parking. Hopefully that gives everyone a better sense of kind of the relationship of these buildings. In addition to the entries here on the north side, we also have worked hard on providing some softening of the alley elevation. And we've done that on the ground plane by introducing some new plantings that screen not only parking, but also 2 new patio features that are ground level patios for 2 units that are on the ground here. And then we've also eroded the southern plaza, which was maybe even too grand for the 1980s portion there of office use. But we've eroded it with taking some of the space for one of the units to have a southern patio, which is nice to have, again, another ground level garden patio here. As well as we've taken away some of what was, you know, really just too wide, out of proportion stairs, and created some more landscaping. We've also utilized that to upgrade the building's water quality by running the storm drain through that as well. So kind of a win-win there. And then we're also doing some minor improvements to the right-of-way with some landscaping and working with the city landscaper on the trees that are out there. So that's a quick overview of the plan there. I'm going to go ahead and flip to the model and kind of spin around a little bit. And maybe I should actually just start by sharing the elevation again one more time.
We'll have more time to go into some of the details. So you've got about 3 minutes.
All right. So, you know, we have taken this elevation that's pretty flat and pretty, you know, it's fenestrated with very small punched windows. And it's hard to see in this Google view. But basically try to get some additional interest and more depth, especially to the southern facade. And then also the key component here has been this atrium. This atrium was a 3-story atrium within, you know, that was there for an office use. And so we've redistributed square footage into that atrium space. We've gained that as floor space. But based on our approvals, we're not necessarily allowed to add any FAR to their approval. And so we've further eroded some of the facade by punching in some balconies. So you can see on the southern elevation on the second floor, we have a nice balcony that's punched in. And then as we spin around the building here, we've eroded and provided some other balconies on not only the west side, but also on the north side as well. So that has worked very well to keep the building's FAR from changing. So that we can maintain those approvals from the original PUD. But it's also provided some opportunity to provide some visual interest and break up the facade, which is, you know, today, again, a rather flat facade that doesn't provide some depth that we feel like we can add with these fenestrations. To note, though, we are still working with an existing envelope, so we don't have the ability to suddenly change a 2-foot plane every 24 feet and create pushes and pulls that we might normally do if we were building a new building. So we are still, I think a lot of the discussion today is going to be, how do we work with these existing envelopes and how do we articulate material changes within them? And so I'll leave it at that, and let's go ahead and start into discussions.
Okay, great, thank you. So the DAB members love to talk about all the details of a building, and we had these really interesting conversations. But today we're going to try to stick to the criteria that are either partially satisfied or not satisfied, and kind of go through them just in order. And so as we said, we're going to try to do it in an hour. We've used a little bit of that time already, I think, but I think we can still do it before 5:30. So what I'd like to do, Jim, since you've had a chance to, you've provided your own self-evaluation that we have in our packet, and we have the staff comments. And I'm guessing that you're familiar with both of those?
Yes.
Okay. So if we go, if in the packet we go down to, I'm not sure what page it's on, but it starts with Appendix A, the Downtown Urban Design Guidelines. Yeah, good. So the first one that we have to review is D. So if we could look at D, maybe enlarge that, that's good. Maybe shrink it a little bit so we can get the staff comment. Great. So what I want to do is pose a question, given that we have both kind of the self-evaluation and the staff comment. I would like to ask particular questions that are related to what's been raised in the staff comments. So the first one deals with minimizing the visibility of mechanical, structural, and electrical. I said that word earlier, appurtenances. And the two criteria there are: use low-profile mechanical units and elevator shafts that are not visible, if not possible, setback or screen rooftop equipment from view. And the second one is be sensitive to the views from the upper floors of neighboring buildings. Skylights and solar panels should have low profiles. So the staff comment suggests that the screening, and this also applies to the city code, says all mechanical equipment is screened from view. And so my question is, have you thought about ways to meet this code requirement?
Absolutely. So as I'm shown in this diagram, I think it's very key, and hopefully you guys have had a chance to visit the site. But there's a unit that's up here today that is every bit of 6 or 7 feet tall.
Jim, let me interrupt you for a second. So what we don't want, unless it's unavoidable, what we don't want is a rationale for why you did what you did. Because you've kind of given us that, and the staff has commented on that. So what we want to try to do is address the staff comments by looking for other ways that you could meet the code, particularly regarding screening.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know why. Can I finish my statement, please?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So there's a 6 to 7 foot tall unit that's on the roof today. And the units that we are proposing are low profile 30-inch tall units.
Mm-hmm.
That 6 to 7 foot tall unit is not visible today as you walk around the site.
So the question in the criteria is, can you see it from upper floors? Because you mentioned the public way, which I assume is the sidewalk or street.
Right.
Okay, so the
I
code,
mean, if you're on a 3-story building, you're going to see everyone's mechanical units.
okay,
So in going to that criteria, I don't think that it's necessarily, if you to read that criteria again, I'm not sure if it's necessarily saying from upper floors.
be sensitive to views from upper floors.
Okay.
So we can ask Dab the same question. Do you see ways that that the applicant can better meet the code requirement? Or is it sufficient?
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty clear that it's sufficient, honestly. I don't understand how it's not meeting the code right now, honestly.
My concern
Why
is
is it
that
deficient?
if we are to screen this, we
It'll
take.
be worse.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, you broke up there, Stephen. What'd you say?
I was saying if we screen it, it'll be more visible and the screen won't necessarily be better. You can't see these. I don't know. I'd like to understand why it's not why they feel it's deficient. It's pretty clear.
As far as the letter of the code, it's saying it doesn't matter how tall the building is, or, you know, sort of the view plane from the pedestrian corridors. It's about screening mechanical equipment, period. That's what the code's saying. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I agree that that's going to make this situation better. I tend to agree with the comments that are already being said, that particularly in the case of small suitcase size mini split heat pumps, they're pretty low profile. And so to kind of start linking them with more objects and stuff on the roof, we're just adding more clutter to the roof, in my opinion, as well. But I see in the code why this is a non-satisfied criteria, because they're very black and white. Every mechanical equipment on a rooftop will have a screen.
And you can't argue in this situation that the parapet is the screen, because it's
Well,
not
I think
level.
we as Dab, Stephen, as Dab, you and I, you know, we can just opine and just say that, you know, we understand that it's a criteria that is not satisfied, but in our professional opinion, it's not applicable to this project.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the code needs to be updated for the reality of mini splits that are much smaller than RTU units. So, I mean, it just seems pretty obvious that this is kind of like a non-issue.
Yep, I agree. Let's move to the next one.
Okay, so if I summarize this, I will say that that this criteria is not applicable to the project.
But that, you know, Dab did not find this criteria specifically applicable to this project.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe that's
due to the size and nature of the mechanical equipment proposed. That would just kind of complete the thought.
Okay. All right, got that. Okay, so let's move on to the next one then. So E is design all sides of the building, including the alley elevations. The staff comment, the sort of core of the staff comment is that the building materials on the primary elevation wrap around to the eastern elevation to the depth of third floor balcony line, though it may not be recommended structural bay and requires DAB review. So I guess the question here is, have Jim, you or DAB thought of ways that you can more fully meet this criteria? It's partially satisfied.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they meant western elevation here. It says the building materials on the primary elevation wrap around to the eastern elevation to the depth of the third floor balcony. So I'm assuming they meant the western. This is
Western,
where,
sorry, yes.
Okay.
Western, okay,
And
western.
that one, and then you can see, I think it wraps around the back. So there's a couple of criteria in here that are tied to site review.
yeah, I think, I realize there's got to be budget constraints for this project. And then I'm not intimately familiar with the setbacks. I know that there's sidewall articulation, and then you're an existing building. So, you've got all sorts of parameters here. I was really fond of what was done to the front south facade. There's just this, additional depth provided, and it took a second kind of coming through the drawings, but you guys have actually furred out, it looks like. So you're not touching the envelope. It's not like you've recessed the windows, you've recessed the balcony, but those two adjacent windows and the two below, that's all the existing plane of the existing envelope. Is that correct, Jim?
Yeah, and we felt like, we needed, again, this primary facade to really try to punch that a little bit. And these are actually, we're getting a little tricky, but, we're even beveling that brick, to
Yeah.
use. And just trying to give, I don't want to use the word curb appeal, but, the front facade is very flat. It's not articulated well. And so creating that facade, as well as that the main entry here of creating some richness of materials, adding more brick than what was there today, felt like a necessity.
Yeah, and I think so. I guess my comment is that I think you guys have done a nice job given the context here on this south facade and the entry, which staff acknowledges, and it's just, how can we push more of this detailing around the building in a way that isn't like superfluous from a budget perspective? I know it's a side yard and it's a rear, but I think that's the nature of the spirit of the comment, is that we want to design these buildings on all facades. And so how can we push some depth? There's 4 in-plane material changes happening on this facade, which we try to avoid like the plague. And so I don't know if you can employ some of those tricks, Jim, where you've, furred out in locations that relate, whether it's the structural bay. I can see where the columns drop in to float the plinth on top of the subgrade parking, or if it's somewhere along the window edges or the massing step. I just think we are seeing a lot of materials in plane change here that feels a little busy and flat. And you've done such a good job elsewhere that I don't think it's a lack of skill or ability to make this facade nicer.
Well, thank you for that vote of confidence. The assumption here, and maybe Alice can speak to it, but we're already substandard on this setback. And again, we're very limited in our ability to add square footage. And so the notion of furring anything out here did not seem like a viable option, because we're below our setback, and we actually start to get into fire code issues if we start to bring anything out here. So
9.5. Oh, 9 foot 5.5. What's the setback here? Is it supposed to be 10?
Yeah, at least 10. And if we get we're already making something worse if we start to go
If you
out.
pump out.
Yeah, so we are trying, to maximize some, 3 or 4 inch, separations between these materials. But to us, it became more of a compositional discussion of trying to, and again, I teed it up at the beginning, we are making these material changes, in 3 or 4 inches. So, but I feel like we are limited to that. I don't feel like we have the ability to start to push this out 2 feet or something like what we did in the front.
Can I ask a
perspective,
question?
zoning perspective, and a fire code perspective?
Can I ask a question? Are you guys replacing all the windows on this facade?
Absolutely. So we're going to take this building down to its sheathing, and then we're going to put continuous insulation on it, and then we're going to start to reclad it.
So one thing that you could do, because it's happening on like right where your cursor is, like on a brick, right? The windows are going to be naturally set back in because you got that little bit of brick, and then on the front. But that section where there's the siding where it reads kind of flat.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be pretty satisfied if you guys were to recess the windows just by, doing a 2x4 buck and, in a 2x6 frame. I don't know what the frame is, but so the windows aren't flush with the siding, just inset the windows.
Right.
Pretty simple
You know,
detail.
and
And that,
again, and then part of that is probably just our model articulation, but yeah, at very least, we can push them in 2 inches. If not
yeah,
further.
that would
So
help
let-
a lot. And you won't
Let me
get,
see if I can frame two possible recommendations from Deb. One is the applicant has sufficiently met this criteria, which it doesn't sound like that's the recommendation at this point. The second one would be, the alternative would be to try to push more of the front facade details around the building on the west side.
Yeah, which sounds like there's some issues with fire rating, but I think within 5 feet, I mean, you're gonna have to fire rate anyways, aren't you? You're doing
Yeah.
1 hour on all this?
Yeah,
You're
we're just
putting-
gonna be restricted. So, but I don't wanna, I mean, we can talk to Allison's here to say, whether or not we can start eating into that encroachment.
right. Well, and you'd have to drastically reduce the glazing,
Well-
which would be bad.
Well, and I guess I don't have it all in front of me or off the top of my head as far as, architectural features are allowed, are some of which are allowable encroachments into side and front yard setbacks. I don't know how they apply it to this particular site and to what dimension that they would benefit you. So I think,
Right.
the relief would be great to add. It sounds like there are quite a few challenges to adding any relief. So then the next thought that I would want to suggest is, can we reduce one of those materials or have, like, I'm not sure I understand what's happening around the alley corner where we see like a single story of brick return, and then we see stucco above it, and then it transitions to siding, and then
Mhm.
a 2-story brick. Like, can you go back to your SketchUp model, please? And that
Yeah,
alley.
I did want to just remind the board here that, we do have this other building jammed up against here. We do have a lot of vegetation also in between the buildings. And so I do want to remind the board that it isn't, it's 3 facades away from being very visible too. So I do want to remind everyone of that. All right, so back to this. So, we are trying, we're insetting these balconies here. I want to make sure everyone understands that. So we're
Mhm.
balconies in, again, to try to get some relief where we can. We've also pushed this balcony in. And so we are kind of creating this little 2-story element that's sitting on this belt course down here, which is mostly brick, but then it's articulated with this patio window. So we are setting up kind of a strong corner here to turn the corner. So we have kind of that strong corner there, and then we have our front brick corner there, and then it becomes this compositional piece of what is left. And so originally we had shown this a little bit more in stucco to try to reduce it, and then there was discussions of reducing that. I think that's where we kind of brought some more of this brick around the base. If we were to look at reducing this to siding, for instance, because I think as the design regulations talk about, stucco siding is unfortunately is preferred versus stucco, which as architects, I don't know if I agree with that. But I'm concerned that, reducing one material here is going to increase the monotony of this elevation.
Can you hold it right there?
We do
that-
need to keep moving, so can we?
Yeah, my recommendation, I think you're alluding to it, is I actually would lose the siding. Do this all stucco, and then you could start to do things like, this with stucco, like you're doing in the front. I'm sorry, it draws so bad on here.
Yeah.
But you could start to have these kind of connections between the windows, even in the back here.
Yeah.
Like you're doing in the front, like you're doing here. You could kind of mimic that, and it would be cleaner. Yeah, I don't think the siding's helping, really.
Right. I mean, I've got no issue, for instance, if we wanted to even express this brick base, we could express this brick base back as well.
Mhm.
You rotating into the front because the issue is you've got the wood, I don't know if it's wood, but you have siding that is the penthouse that's stepped back. So basically, I mean, one less material, in my opinion, due to the flatness of the facade and the somewhat sort of prescribed flatness because of the existing condition. I think simplifying the material use and looking at additional unifying elements like that base course you just described to keep it quite generic, Todd, for your summary of this point would be, I think I agree with staff that the facades need a little bit of massaging to reduce the material usage and explore additional unifying elements, and we can just leave it open-ended like that.
I would also ask that, Todd, you include the discussion of that stucco is maybe preferred versus the siding, because that is something we want to make sure is clear as we go forward.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so, because I mean, personally, I think this is it's kind of a big, I hate to use the word monolith, but that, for lack of a better term, that's what it is.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Edifice.
It's a big edifice. And why not? I think stucco, you could even do some color changes in stucco instead of the siding if you wanted to still. And like I said, you could do a little relief with the stucco.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this elevation would work fine with the stucco change color in here.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then you can simplify it and unify it.
Yeah.
Rather than having siding for siding's sake. It's not.
Okay, so I'm thinking that the recommendation would be to consider more architectural detailing on the western facade to reduce flattening. And were we talking about reducing the number of materials?
Yeah, I think just reducing the number of materials and exploring additional unifying elements.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say more architectural detail. I think we actually said.
No, I would not, because I think we got
relief might be opportunities for relief, whether.
Yeah, the limited opportunities for relief, I would qualify because they're up against
sure
setback.
But even like I said, if you set the windows back, if you do stucco, it makes a huge difference. Not a big deal.
No,
yeah,
I
when
think
you
that's
change materials,
it's a good comment, Stephen. I agree.
I mean, even putting, like, I'm assuming, this model doesn't show level detail, but I would imagine there's some sort of fry reglet, sort of reveal details between material changes, something to kind of create shadow lines and gaps. So
yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like the recommendation here is to consider on the western facade ways to reduce the flattening and look for opportunities for relief, which may be the same thing. And there's a preference for using more stucco. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I think so, yeah. Are you guys changing the color on the other building?
No, we are not.
It's not.
I think we're gonna have to look at the, replacing the light fixtures on there to make them compliant. There's a couple of non-compliant light fixtures.
Okay, we need to move on.
But that's all we're doing.
Okay.
That was a good discussion. I really appreciate that, but it took us a little bit too long.
I
So
think that was the meatiest thing we had, unless
it's going to maybe answer some other questions.
Yeah.
So that might be good. So moving on to F. So this one is exterior building lighting should be designed to enhance the overall architecture of the building. So and then security lighting should be designed for safety as well as nighttime appearance. So there's really two issues here. One is lighting to enhance the building and the other is security. So the staff comment is the proposal will be required to meet the city outdoor lighting ordinance. Alley elevation indicates path lights illuminating the walkway along the rear parking area. Lighting on the front elevation plans is not indicated. Applicant needs to confirm the entry walkway lighting.
Yeah,
So
so site photometrics are not part of the site review, they're part of tech docs. And so the site lighting has not been developed. And so the simple answer is we'll comply with that and we'll be able to show compliance, but I don't think that there's anything that I can show for
Any
discussion
other
today.
building perhaps? Jim, sorry, I just stopped for a second. And you said you were gonna maybe do some upgraded lighting on the other side?
We'll have to take if it's a non-compliant, non-cutoff fixture, we'll have to replace it. But
You're talking about the outdoor lighting ordinance now, complying with that?
no, I'm talking about the existing building today. So
Oh, the
today,
existing.
there's a globe fixture here or something like that, we'll have to replace with a cutoff. Otherwise, we have all this new opportunity to create low-level lighting for this plaza. We're not trying to put any big lights up there and light everything up. But yes, we haven't gotten into, what is that sconce, what is this sconce light? But we know we can develop something that's, again, we're trying to simply say that we're developing low-level lighting. We're not trying to even put sconces up at, 10 feet here or even 8 feet. And so, that's as far as we've gotten today. We know
Okay.
we have to meet the ordinance. We know we have to show that. We're gonna pick out tasteful fixtures. But I think that's as far as the conversation needs to go for today, because while
Yeah.
that criteria is listed in the DDAB, it's not necessarily where we're at in the site review drawings.
Okay.
Yeah, we can,
Well-
it used to be part of the site review criteria. It is no longer part of the site review criteria, the photometrics. So if there's any very general thoughts on lighting, because it wasn't indicated, that's an okay topic for the the downtown urban design guidelines, but you don't, whatever you're, just explain the intention, as Jim is saying, low level lighting in here, security lighting at the back. And I think that that's a good
Yeah.
explanation.
And I think the lighting will give you a good opportunity to tie the two sides together a little bit. Like if you think of it at night, right, where you can't see all this and you have some, whether it's the low level lighting or some really simple kind of sconces that are like flooding a little bit of the walls here and there, I think it'll tie it all together, which would be nice. Assuming there's like gold fixtures and stuff on there now, I can't remember.
Okay, so
But-
it sounds like we're saying that this is partially satisfied. Jim's actually saying that the other part will be satisfied. Is still to be determined because it's not part of this design, it's part of more of the existing building.
No,
Well, it's just a
I'm not saying
different
that at all.
different part of the process.
I'm saying that criteria is out of place in discussions today because we haven't addressed it.
But you will.
Yes.
You will,
Okay.
fair enough.
And you guys and Dab's comfortable with that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just,
All right.
a fact.
Okay, so let's move on to G. Thank you, who's ever doing that.
That's me.
Oh, okay.
I'm
I
good at
noticed you're
driving.
like rushing through these. You're like ready right there. Like, are we there yet? I guess we are. Okay, so G, reduce the visual impact of structured and surface parking. And there's 3 criteria to be met there, and the staff's comment is that the west elevation between the property line and the parking foundation extends above grade with open ventilation, does not indicate any vegetation or physical screening. Screening possibilities could be either landscape or architectural elements. So does the plan indicate any vegetation or physical screening on the west? Looks like
Most of these trees are all, and the existing vegetation is on the adjacent property. So there's not much we can do to unscreen this. And unfortunately,
okay.
this van is in our way. But
You have it in your SketchUp model?
yes, I can show it in SketchUp, but we don't have the vegetation put in there. So, but to give you guys an idea of what we're talking about, I'm not trying to get that.
So this criteria is to try to minimize the impact of, kind of highlighting parking.
Right. So, here we are, the parking level, I'm sorry, I don't remember the actual dimension. I think I think we're 5 feet up and about 5 feet down to the parking. And so, and it kind of ramps up and then ramps back down. And so, I think we're very well screened, obviously, from the east with the existing plaza. And then whatever peekaboo you have along this line here is well screened by the existing landscaping and trees that are already established.
Is that the issue, Kalani, or is it the neighboring property, if they have windows, are staring
No.
in at the parking?
So we have the parking landscaping screening. It is a pretty peekaboo portion. Though all this landscaping is actually on the neighbor's property. And so they could get rid of it.
Right.
And there's nothing indicated on this plan as if they're planning on screening in those pockets there.
Oh man, here's your chance for some architectural interest on that facade,
Well,
Mr.
if it's
Bray.
just a landscaping element, if the board feels like they should fill in some
I
landscaping,
see
or if
story and a half screens coming in front of stucco.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
this
that
vegetation,
yeah,
all of this vegetation, especially towards the front.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and we
existing.
are re-landscaping this component here, but we
Yeah.
did not landscape that, but
So it could be something like if the board feels like it needs additional screening to cover that, it may be that this is satisfactory as it is. We just need to put it in there as partially, and you can take a look at
I mean,
it.
is there any harm in putting some 5-gallon buckets of native grass that's got a drip line and just kind of doing something in front of that along that property line? Are you adverse to that?
no, I mean, as I said, it's pretty well landscaped now, but could there be some additional there's some crap in here. So, I mean, I know we're going to replace it. So if you want us to add it to the plan, you can.
Can I ask a question? Is your client is there security issues here? I mean, I'm surprised you're not.
We have had this conversation many times, and it's very interesting because I agree. There's been some, once or twice someone has broken into the boiler room down here, but you would think that this would be a magnet, and it doesn't seem to be.
It isn't.
I've lived here 10 years and I've never seen this building, and I drive by it every day. So I think this building has just blended in to the landscape.
I definitely know this. I mean, I'm just surprised you wouldn't want to put a garage door on this.
Yeah, or bars on the windows on the sides.
Well, I mean, of course, none of us want to do that, right? So right now, it's not a problem. We would like to think it's not going to be a problem in the future. The use is actually going to change in the fact that now we'll have habitants there 24/7 versus just 8 to 5. So in some ways, I would think it would be less of a problem.
Yeah.
With more physical presence, but
I mean,
Yeah,
So
we're
let's-
opposite.
so
where
let's,
now there's a
um,
bunch of cars with personal effects in them for people to bust into.
yeah, that's fair. But yeah, we've had the discussions several times, and it doesn't, it's not an issue that we are currently dealing with. If we were to do it, it would be an open grate garage door. It would be open side grates on the western side. So design wise, I don't think it would necessarily impact the design, but currently it's not in the plan.
So this criteria is really dealing with the visual impact. So not necessarily security issues, but obviously it has some impact on that. So it sounds like our recommendation is to consider additional landscaping to screen that western elevation. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
yeah. I
Okay,
think
good.
that's fine. I mean, personally, I think the building would look better if there was a garage door, but I'm not, that's just my personal opinion, because it does feel kind of weird to have this dark, parking cavity. And I definitely noticed this building driving by. Roy, you should notice it. But anyways, that's just my,
Point
but I don't think the
taken.
west facade has there's really nothing, I mean, there's very little exposure and.
So we have about 30 minutes left before our hard stop on this. So let's keep moving. We're
Sure.
on to H now, which is the law requires that universal access be located within the principal public entrance. And the staff comment is currently the primary public entry south elevation is not accessible.
So I want to preface this, that this is not a public building, nor are there fully accessible units required within the unit, within the building. So we're type B units. As I said before, we're 5 feet above. So it is not practical to put a ramp along the front of the building. So it is an existing building. So I believe we are meeting the letter of the law here by providing handicap parking in the back, which in fact is actually more accessible to the elevator than if we were to somehow get someone walking up a ramp in the front.
So just briefly, this says the law requires that universal access be located within the principal public entrance. So, but that would require it to be a public building. So are you saying that this particular criteria doesn't apply because it's not a public building?
No, I'm saying that we're providing to the maximum extent possible accessibility.
Yeah, this is a weird comment because it's referencing a federal mandate that actually this building falls under international existing building code criteria. So there's all sorts of exemptions, or I guess alternatives, depending on how much work they're doing, what the budget of the work is that they're doing, et cetera, that relate to accessibility. And I would argue that what they've done here is parking directly accessible to an entrance is much more useful than the sidewalk. Typically what you would see if it was a public use would be a sign that would direct people from the front plaza that would say accessible entrance and rear. But it seems like because this is a residential use now, that people would have specific knowledge of where they were going typically.
Right.
I think
So the applicant has met this criteria.
I just don't think, I think it's I don't think it's an issue. I don't know how to say.
Well, that
met
would
the
mean
criteria.
that it wouldn't apply, that this criteria wouldn't apply to this.
Oh, it's
region.
because it's existing. I mean, if you were starting from scratch, you would look at it differently, but it would be really difficult to have a 60-foot plus ramp somewhere. in the front.
Well, it's even more, it's the 60 feet of rise, then you have to break it. Because
Yeah,
it's going out
exactly.
more than 30 inches twice. And then you
Yeah.
have to have those 2 landings plus the other 4 landings. I mean, it would devour that front landscape.
I would say this though, that if, and just look at the back rear entry. If somebody needs an accessible route and they aren't driving and they want to, wheel into town,
Right.
look at how they would go and, could you make it hospitable that you're not necessarily driving, you might be wheeling out the back up the alley. And that's the best you can do, but is there, whether it's lighting along that or whatever it is that would make it, not a terrible experience to have to go up the alley to wheel
Yeah,
into.
so they have the ability to go up the alley and then back and around. So,
Yeah,
or simply around the building.
yeah,
Okay, so every time, Stephen and Rory, every time you frame something, frame it as a suggestion or
okay,
recommendation. So I'm going to say that the applicant has adequately met this criteria given the conditions of the building and the private use. That work for you guys?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would, the existing building is for sure. The
Yeah, given the existing
nature of this
conditions
building.
and the private use of the building.
Yes.
Okay,
And like I said, my suggestion would be to look at that route to the alley and just make sure that there's good lighting and stuff if somebody does want to use that. as their-
okay, revisit lighting.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think I think it's more than that. I think it's just to revisit the path from the sidewalk to the rear of the building.
Yeah.
okay. Path from sidewalk to the rear of the building. Okay, got it. So moving on. We are now jumping over these criteria until we get to open space.
So what number was that or letter? was
That is, it's
Page
under
37.
building, siting, and design criteria,
There it is.
I think.
There it is. Yep.
The site review section.
Site design criteria. So open space. Okay, so usable open space is arranged to be accessible and designed to encourage use by incorporating quality landscaping, a mixture of sun and shade, hardscape areas, and green spaces for gathering. This is partially met, and the staff's comment says the alley should be improved to include an additional landscape buffer to avoid having the area adjacent to the patios evolve into spillover parking.
And that, and since that comment, we have incorporated these planters between the patio and the alley.
Okay. So is that sufficient? Is that sufficient for DAB?
Can you just go to that yeah, in SketchUp?
And we're working with landscaping to find, material that, basically just lays down in the winter and doesn't get beat up and broken. And we just know, we all know and appreciate how inhospitable this alley is with snow removal and other things like that. So whatever's going to be planted there, the winter is just going to lay down and get covered in snow and then come back.
Okay, so I would frame this as the applicant has added landscape features to address this issue.
Yes.
Okay, you guys comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable, and I would suggest, yeah, just like you said, looking at plantings, even lavender bushes could be great back there. We'll kind of stick around.
Okay. So let's move on to C, landscaping and screening. This one is also partially met. And the
And can I add real quick though, too,
Yeah.
sometimes you may, because there might be some overlap between the design guidelines and site review, you may have already kind of resolved or half resolved some of these later ones too.
right.
Okay, good.
So the comment is that the west elevation where the parking structure has exposed structural columns and ventilation areas that are not screened. The landscape area along this area could include vegetative screening or architectural elements. So is that what we were just talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so this has been addressed.
Kind of a duplicate.
Addressed previously. Okay. So then we're moving on to building, siting, and design criteria. The main criteria under that is building, siting, and public realm interface. That may be a no, that's actually been addressed. So let's skip over that one and go to item 4. You're on 6 there.
Item 4, I think is satisfied.
Item 4 under
The next one is actually sheet 42 or sheet 7 on this appendix. Is the
Oh, there we go.
discussion you had about the mechanical units. It's
which we
another-
already discussed.
Yep,
Right, so moving on from that one,
it's on sheet 8 and it's
it's this one, simple
window
detailing,
patterning.
it's right here.
Which I feel like we already talked about.
So the criteria, simple detailing is incorporated into the facades to create visual interest. Have we addressed that one? It's the
believe so.
comment, staff comment is the west and north elevation does not utilize or minimally utilizes the detailing listed in the criteria.
So
I think
believe
we
that's
kind
what-
of addressed that one in our previous discussion. It's the same.
We've
Wait.
covered this.
I think we did, but I think I think it's worth just including a comment to this specific criteria that is mimics what we said earlier, that, you know, reducing the material complexity and exploring additional unifying elements that utilizes detailing listed in this criteria, which Jim was already talking about, maybe continuing the base course, and things are 3 inches out of plane, and you know, whether that's sort of, you know, a cornice or whatever you want to call it. I think it's the same spirit, but I think we should acknowledge that this criteria requires that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Rory, say that again. What does it require?
A simplification of material use and exploration of additional unifying elements to the facades.
Additional unifying elements.
To the facades.
Okay.
Yeah, this is exactly the same. It's the same. This one too.
Okay, got that. Okay, and then the next one is under building materials. And it is
I mean, this is where I
partially
recommend-
satisfied.
Yeah, is to maybe eliminate the siding.
So some of the material changes are not indicative of changes in the form or function. Example, programmatic, etc. There is opportunity for DAB to simplify the material hierarchy and material assignment on the facades. So we've obviously covered that.
Yeah.
We have, I would say, see earlier comments.
Yeah.
Is that legit, Kalani? Can we just reference?
I know that there was a recommendation that they use less siding, more stucco, and maybe just reiterate that like you did on the last one for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Less siding, more stucco.
I mean, maybe not in those exact words, but that was
Well,
I'm dead summarizing you.
you said them, so they're on paper now. They'll be in the minutes.
And I think it was, you know, you guys noted that there was a lot of materials with in-between changes through there. So.
Right. Okay. We may, we're getting close here. So the next one is dealing with the cladding materials. It is 4. Yeah, you got that up. So building cladding materials turn convex corners and continue to the inset wall. The criterion does not apply to changes that occur at an interior corner, nor to detailing elements such as cornices, belt courses, reveals, offsets, etc. So the comment is the building materials transition in plane without offsets. Well, this project utilizes the existing building form, and this limits the overall planar changes across the west and north elevation. There remains an opportunity for DAB to review the materials and detailing. So
Yeah, I think this is all the same. It's just, again,
this
like
is also addressed.
yeah, I think it's just reducing the complexity of the material palette, simplifying the material palette, and continuing to explore unifying elements for the facade.
There's one thing I wanted to think about on this one, and if you could bring up the SketchUp model again, maybe the front. It's kind of related to these like in and out kind of cavities. Maybe can zoom it around. I know you guys are, you got rid of that like super cool 80s atrium glass, right? Which is good. And you're keeping the arches right up top. I don't know if you can zoom around to the front, maybe. Just thinking about the unifying element, one thing that, if you just hold it right there, when I keep looking at this, I'm wanting something to happen here. Oh, if you just hold it right there. Oh, is it still moving? There we go. Like in here, it's like I want, because you're keeping this element and you've pushed this, you're opening this up. This is a deck, I'm assuming, or is this just roof here?
It's just roof.
Yeah, it's like I'm wanting to, I don't know, extend these up to connect that, but just to reinforce the kind of like cavity thing that you're going for here. But anyways, that was just
Yeah, we looked at
related.
that. One of the things is we really, as you were down here, I kind of liked it stepping back. And you can also see how it's not planar with that parapet. It's pushed further back. So there's some weirdness that
I mean, the ode to the, original.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like
it's interesting, but is it really necessary to keep that the storefront mullions up there? I mean, it seems I appreciate sort of the honoring of the skeletal original diagram, but I'm not sure it worked in the 80s, and I'm not sure it works right now.
Did you brought some of it back? You like took some of the bays out?
Yeah.
Or not? Yeah.
You've done such a good job that from the pedestrian experience, the 2-story brick, which is a nice new kind of, I like the color and the texture you're rendering on the brick versus the red that's in the plaza, which is something I wanted to talk about at some point. But that upper level steps back and almost kind of is not part of the pedestrian experience. You really experience this building from the plaza as this beautiful 2-story masonry clad brick facade. It draws your eye up to see the old skeletal structure of the skylight. And again, I'm sure someone's attached to it somewhere, so I'm not going to die on my sword for it. But in my mind, I would just do one of these, flick, and then and then that whole upper level just disappears.
I would be fine with the board making a recommendation that they're indifferent to that, and that is not necessary.
Yeah, I am very indifferent to that. Extremely indifferent.
I guess my point is there's something, I don't know, there's something like a little bit unresolved right there. I mean, and I don't have an answer. My first thought is like, what if this was a little bit higher than this element? But again, it's not. I'm just throwing stuff. It's just something feels funny, and maybe it is. Maybe it is.
I'm gonna tilt the cards a little bit. And just say, this is not necessarily space that we want to program as amenity space. But we anticipate we will build it as such that if the HOA wants to develop this as a little community garden or something, they can.
Okay.
But we didn't necessarily want to put that in there because it becomes, another maintenance thing. And,
sure.
Does the community want it? I don't know. And so we've kind of left that open to be developed by the future, but we're not putting mechanical up there or anything else. So the notion of raising that or to cut that off a little bit more too.
So Stephen and Rory, we've got about 7 or 8 minutes. Are there any other recommendations that you want to make?
Well, I would just I want to document my indifference to that steel or that storefront. It just feels like a relic that is completely unnecessary and really visually cluttered. We just went through the facades about like, hey, let's have some more kind of logic to where we start and stop materials. And then of course we've got this tiara sitting on the building. So I want that in the minutes. Beyond that,
it looked like a little tiara up there.
You could put like 10 sky chairs hanging off that thing, and that's be super cool.
Yeah, or maybe put like a big star on the top of it or something. The other question I had, and I realize there's a challenge because, where do you start and stop scope? And there is, some sort of boundary line between the adjacent, although attached, existing residential. But the difference in brick materials feels a little distracting to me and disjointed. And we already kind of have two buildings that are completely disjointed. And now that we have this new ground plane where you guys are inserting a lot of new work, I love the way you've rendered the brick on the building because it's more interesting. Is there any opportunity, whether it's brick imaging coming down and doing their magic with some of the repaints or whatever that they're able to, staining and stuff? Is there any way to kind of get the brick materials to be unified? Because I think this plays into some of those earlier comments about, the amount of materials and on the facade and now kind of taking it to the plaza.
Yeah.
Rory, can I ask you a clarifying question? Or do you mean like the brown brick and the
red brick, all the site
brick?
walls, right, in the plaza,
Or-
are all this red
Or is
brick,
it
and
the
then
multicolored brick? I mean, a lot of people do multicolored brick to add interest, but I think it is counterintuitive. Like, there was no such thing as multicolored brick when they made bricks.
what are you talking about? All the mud was different colors, dude.
No, but it wasn't the way we do it now. Like, just
No,
Robinson.
to be clear and concise, actually, Stephen, I just think there's two very clearly different rendered brick materials. And is there any opportunity to actually unify the brick material usage one way or the other?
Well, we were actually looking for a little differentiation between them. We felt that if you went back to the existing building, that there's a little bit of monotony going on here. And it's a little too much. We also know that, as you know, getting that exact brick is also going to be it'll be a near miss. And so the conversation evolved into, well, let's get, some bricks that we think can live together, but don't look like near misses and work as complements to each other. And so, and now we have a differential between the site walls and the building architectural brick. And so
you're going to have to match existing site wall brick, right, with your proposed site wall brick. So I think that whole argument you presented, although eloquent,
right,
is completely falling flat for me.
This little component, we are going to get as close as
I'm going to raise the BS stick on you there, Mr. Bray, because it sounded great, but that was completely not factual. You're going to have to match
the decorum rules.
We're going to have to try to match it. Yes.
Can you go back to the brick sample page?
And so we think that more materials is better. Is that, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. You guys are actually interested.
We're advocating for a different brick being used on the building. Yes, and we recognize that we have two different bricks. And we recognize that Boulder has overbuilt red brick buildings.
Yeah, I'm actually a fan of the face brick. And this is not uncommon for members of DAB to not always see completely eye to eye. I personally think that the face brick is a very nice brick with some movement to it. And that if I would personally think this project would be much more successful to unify it with the plinth out of the face brick material. That's just my opinion. And I don't know how much scope you're taking on the right half of that stairs. That was kind of what I led with this comment, was that I understand that there's
it's really just
a scope boundary somewhere, and that at a certain point you're not even on your property, and I don't know if you're embellishing those walls or not.
This is is really the limit to the new section of site wall.
Got it. So that left section is the existing section. You're to remain, and you guys are just building a planter off that. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, this stair today is ridiculously wide and goes all the way over there. So we're literally just overframing that, turning that into landscaping. So
understood. I thought you were rebuilding that entire perimeter. So you're just adding a new edge to that
section.
Yeah, I mean, brick imaging can do some amazing stuff as far as staining bricks and whatever, but that was just my comment. I think that, again, back to all of the earlier comments about simplifying the material usage, I would like to indicate that using two different bricks should be reviewed if there's a way to unify them.
Well, I mean, it's
Yeah,
pretty,
I mean,
it's pretty simple, the discussion is we either make this red brick or we added a lot of scope here to start to deconstruct all these walls and redo them, which
I think that's a fair comment.
No,
and
I think
so
that-
that's
Okay.
a
I
lot
think
of
the
scope.
two bricks is fine. In the SketchUp model, there's a lot more variation, just the way, it's rendered, but that's why I want to see the sample, but it's pretty subtle, so it's not gonna feel so busy.
Right, but we want a little bit of movement in it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the building next to you, that one is, that's like a totally different building. It's not even, it's just attached.
It's so
It's got no brick whatsoever. It is classic McStain early 80s, build it as cheap as you can siding.
Yeah.
On wood.
No, it's just that every time I drive by that, 'cause it's right next to E-Town, it's like that color is so horrific of that.
I would love to paint that, but that's not.
Oh my God. See if you can convince them to change the color.
No, yeah.
So
We have.
so
swap
we're
out
sort
the
of out
windows
of time.
for-
We're kind of out of time here, so, and we need to
Yeah.
let the
Sure.
staff go and kind of move on to bring back our other two DAB members and kind of
Sure.
keep going. So I've got that captured, kind of that last conversation. And that, I think that was really helpful. So we'll also incorporate that into it. So let's just sort of officially end this discussion of the project and let Jim go, and thank him and his team for putting up with us. And I think we really enjoyed talking about this. Unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of time to do it. I was interested in what the heck the Wealth Conservancy is, but that's another conversation. So I think Jim will let you go, and we will put all of these comments into the minutes and make sure that you and the planning board have their comments and the recommendations. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you all.
Okay. Sorry to cut you guys off like that, but
No, that was fun.
It's good.
okay. So Gavin, is Gavin part of his team?
Part of the applicants team.
I
I
think
am,
so.
and I'm leaving the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Gavin.
I have sent an email to your other two board members so they can be joined
Okay.
when
All right.
back. I'm trying to check on our agenda because I don't know if we have anything that staff's put up, but maybe the board has something you guys want to talk about under matters.
Nope.
So there's board matters, calendar check, and then adjournment. So
And we didn't have any matters items. We will have a project next month though.
just one.
Well, it's two buildings. It's the Alpine Balsam project, the city buildings. So those will
Okay.
be, you guys, will be a little bit different.
So
application.
We're gonna lay into that applicant, huh, Colony?
So it's like portions of, it's not the full site, it's the portions that are outside of the strict form-based code area. So you'll see that, and it's probably the format's gonna be a little bit different. So we're working with them because you'll see design evolution in that application, and it'll be against the site review criteria. So
Okay.
I think it'll be an interesting conversation. I do think it's going to take probably a bit longer it's going to take 2 hours because you have two buildings to go through.
Right. Right.
And
Okay.
they've hit most of those, but there are some critical ones we want you to take a look at because they're public buildings. So that's
So did you were you gonna text Matthew and
I emailed them. I
you
don't,
emailed them? Okay,
I told them I would email them. I did send an email saying that we're ready to have you back into the meeting.
okay.
I don't know, Amanda, if you see them calling in or anything.
I don't see them signed back in yet.
And I
Alani, I
can't,
thought you said you were gonna text them, but maybe that's,
I don't have, let me see if they, I don't even know if they have.
Phone numbers.
They might think that we're done after this anyways, because there's,
That's what I was wondering. We didn't say we had business afterwards. too,
right.
So. I'm not seeing anything from them.
Okay. Well, there is one or two board matters, I guess. One of them is that it sounds like we have some applicants for the board.
We have 2 applicants that have applied for Todd's opening position. Todd is kindly let us know he can stay available for, there's an option if we don't have enough of a quorum or we're still missing applicants, like council has opened back up for board members that are leaving to stay on until the position's filled.
Is your seat up, Dot?
Yeah, it was up in March was supposed to be my last meeting.
oh,
Got it.
But apparently I can stay on.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that means I would stay on and just chair the discussions like I've been doing, if that's been helpful, or if somebody else wants to take that over. And then, so there's my sort of departure, but that depends really on when this other seat is filled.
And council did open up the applications again in new department. The window closes on the 19th, I believe, of this month. So right now we have 2 applications and we may get more. So if you know of anyone that's looking to be part of the DAB board, yeah, definitely let them know. We're still taking applications on there. And then they
Okay.
will, I'm thinking probably June is probably when that person might be seated in time for the DAB meeting. So we'll probably
In
have
June,
one more
okay.
meeting without this new person because they need to do interviews, they need to schedule all of that, and that takes some time.
Right. Yeah.
So looked for possibly June as the new appointment at that point and seating a new board member.
Okay. All right.
And yeah, council also does the the appointments during a
Right.
public meeting. You're always welcome to it, you know.
Interviews and appointments.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Matthew, and do we have anything to add? We had the board matters that we were talking about just now were applicants for my position, because I went off in March, but I can apparently stay on until it's filled, and Kalani said it'd probably be filled in June. So I'd probably stay on for May. And I'm happy to be the chair and kind of put the hammer down when necessary. But other than that, it's, I guess, totally up to you guys. So
And
that's
I
kind of,
might have missed this conversation, but have there been any applicants or interviews?
There's 2 applications right now since they reopened the window. Brendan,
Are they professional applicants or are they community member applicants?
they are one professional, I think, and then I believe the other one's also a professional. But yes, there are 2 professional applicants so far, at least in one way, shape, or form in the design profession, whether it's architectural historian, architect, architectural designer, something like that. And if you know of anyone, Brendan or Matthew, that's looking to want to join a board, the application is open until the 19th of this month. So they'll close again the 19th. It'll take about a month to conduct their interviews and do the vetting, and then they'll vote on it probably in time for the June meeting for a seat on DAB in June.
so I recruited one person, and she applied. So she's, I guess, in the mix, and she's she has an architecture background, but I think she's working primarily in real estate. And her father, she's from Portland, and her father was a kind of a well-known architect in Portland, so
Cool.
yeah. So other than that, are there any board matters? Kalani said there's really no calendar check.
ML
And
has-
ML's got her hand up.
Oh, yes.
I do have my hand up. Thank you. Yeah, this will be my last meeting with you all as liaison. I believe that at our planning board meeting next week, we will be and Amanda's nodding, yeah, that on our agenda, hopefully, we will be reassigning ourselves to new liaison situations. So I will need to move on from that because I'm sure there's a queue behind me. Everybody wants to get on on this wonderful board and be the liaison. Thank you so much for the awesome conversations you guys have. It's a treat. It's a real treat to be the liaison on this board and to listen to the conversations and the kind of meaningful results that come from that. And I would like to encourage, and I guess it's Amanda here that sits on or goes to, are you still going to be coming, or is it only Thomas to planning?
Mostly Thomas. I'll fill in when he's not available.
But I'd like to encourage, I've seen that at the last project and maybe a little bit prior, but having a section in our packet that says DAB and what DAB's recommendations were, that lands on in our packet as part of the project review. I love that it was at the last one, and I think Tab was on our last one. Amanda, is that kind of standard protocol now? And if not, maybe we can make it so.
That is standard protocol with the case manager. So when Todd does the summaries, ML, they're intentionally summarized into the planning case manager summary for planning board. So you guys can see where they're at and what they were.
Perfect. I guess I hadn't really seen them prominently in the past, but I did see them in the recent packets, and I really appreciate that because these are great conversations and they should make it to the project review that has, you know, the next step implications for the applicant. So thank you all for your great work, and it's been a pleasure being your liaison.
Yeah, thank you, ML.
We enjoyed having you too.
For sure.
Yeah, thanks, ML, and I really appreciate having your design background and architecture experience. It was helpful.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're at the adjournment point. So
wow, that's a record. 5:41. Congratulations, team.
Is it because
I hope I
Brendan and
didn't
I
cut
weren't
off the
involved?
substance
Yeah,
too
it's
much.
definitely because you two weren't there. With all your last minute comments. No,
That's right. And furthermore, I mean, we can drag it out, Rory, if you want. We can continue.
He was tired of hearing us talk by the end of it.
Who was Jim?
The applicant, yeah. He was like,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah. I thought he was like, who are these people?
Yeah. He's like, great.
Yeah.
No, yeah. And I always have, you know, the one thing that I will say before we adjourn here, something to keep in mind moving forward, and we've talked about this often, is there's that fine line between us interpreting the code and the written language and saying, you know, if we were to interpret it and apply it, versus we also tend to err on the side of just providing our professional opinion, even if it's in conflict with what's written in the code. And that's something I've personally always struggled with. Early on in my tenure on the board, I was very I thought I was being asked to fulfill a task, which was to read, interpret, apply. And then different personalities on the board have, at least for me, opened it into being much more of let's make it a design critique and, you know, kind of leave some of the rules of, you know, letter of the law behind so that it's actually much more informative and kind of professionally relevant to us.
Right. That's a good point. And I think in some ways we're being pushed further into the
box. Yeah,
interpreting.
Kailani's almost got us in her trap where we just go through the criteria.
Right.
Red light, green light.
Well, we definitely want your recommendations, because you'll notice, like, even tonight when there's competing criteria, right? You have to resolve that. We need help, help the applicant through some of resolving some of those. Or if something doesn't, with an existing building, you're working with they might not be able to hit everything, but staff still has to go through and do an evaluation on whether it meets something or doesn't meet something. There are a lot of constraints involved, and that's where your professional recommendations really come in handy. And obviously your recommendations, it may be something like that really, maybe that's a little outdated. And as we do any code changes, those things start to come up too, and they might be influencing later code changes that come along.
Sure.
Right.
Definitely relevant, but we do need to have you guys reference a criteria, because that is the thing that actually lends planning board leverage when they're doing the approval. So.
And we appreciate too the opportunity to, review what planning board has suggested as being potential criteria items to address, and then add, I couldn't this time, but in the future, that is a nice feature.
We've been asking as case managers those are referrals from planning board and city council, and it has been, they've been trying to be very direct about what's the referral conditions. Like, is there something you want the board specifically to look at? Because it is really helpful. There are a lot of criteria, and it's hard to tell, right? If you just get an open package and they really want you to look at something and you're looking at something else. So we've been trying to get those that specific direction trickled down into your packets too.
Yeah, and you have the staff and the legwork so there's a lot that goes into the packets, I think, in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, should we make a motion to adjourn here, Todd?
We don't have to make a motion to adjourn.
I can just click the leave button. Is that how
Yeah,
that works?
I just adjourn the meeting and we're done.
We've got some senioritis over here.
Yeah.
Might be nice
Sort of
outside.
wave like what's her name does on the basketball court.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.
We'll see you
Okay.
next month for the next one.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.